This is the title of the chat today, Technology in the Connected Manufacturing Industry. So, a bit of background, my name's Chris Jones, I'm President and CEO of Actify. I know over 30 years of experience in the CAD/CAM PLM business. I know that's difficult to believe with this great complexion and lack of worry lines and grey hair. And I was previously president of the European operations with Dassault Systems for the Smart Team operation. Before that, I worked for Siemens, and one of my claims to fame was way back when, in the late 70s, I was actually responsible for writing the first draft technical specification for Ironman engineering, even before it was called Ironman. So I've got quite a bit of experience in this business. Actify, just to give you an idea, been around 20 years, well known for its Spinfire product, which is a CAD viewing product. More recently, what we've done is take that viewing to the next level, and so now we can view information from multiple disparate databases and collate them into one place, and then push them to either dashboards or Plex or other locations. So that's me and the company that I work for. So the agenda for today is how did we get here? A quick history lesson. The state of the manufacturing industry, some of the disruptive technologies that are there already, and how the technologies are not only changing the way we work, but also some of the business relationships that technology companies have with you, the customer. And I think that's one of the key things, and probably one of the most important things that hopefully you'll take away from this chat today. And then, where do we go from here? So this is the start of the presentation, basically. I think there's been three fundamental drivers that have appeared over the last few years that are fundamentally changing the way that we do business. So I'm assuming that everybody in this room represents a company that manufactures physical things, right? Quick show of hands, you all make stuff? Right, okay. I don't, right? I'm in the virtual world, I'm a software provider. So I sort of want you to imagine there's a white line around here that separates me from you, okay? And the three things that have come together over the last decade that I think are fundamentally changing the business, and not only the business, but our relationship between me on this side of the white line and you guys, are the iPhone, or smartphones, the economy, and the cloud. And those three things have sort of come together to really fundamentally change the industry and the business relationships and the contracts and what you guys want from us as suppliers. So smartphones, we've all got them, and they're yours. The apps on them define you. This has got, apps that help me in my life. Bank account, expenses. I do a lot of traveling, so hotelbooking.com, airline apps, etc., etc. The cloud has changed things, I think, enormously, and the economic downturn also made people start to think seriously about what they wanted from their software provider. Clearly, you guys have had to do a lot more over the last 10 years with a lot less, right? A lot less people and more pressure. Finding the right staff has been difficult, and how do you, cope, basically? The other thing that's happened is that we've found is that financial guys are looking at the software business and saying, well, just a minute, why do we pay for stuff that we don't actually use? And here's a sort of a bit of a story that perhaps, and I've never really understood this, the business relationship between software companies and customers, is that think of me at the moment as a tree salesman, okay? Let's make the analogy between software and trees. I turn up as the salesman and I show you this magnificent oak. You know, it's 50 foot high, 50 foot across, it's full of leaf, it's got a trunk that's, you know, 1.5 meters wide, it's brilliant. And you guys go, wow, that's fantastic. I want one of those trees, that's brilliant. And you sign off a purchase order and I go back, go, yes, got a great order. And we send out the service guy, you know, the installation engineer, and he turns up with his shovel and his watering can, and he's got a sapling that's about this big and a trunk that's about 2 inches wide. He digs the hole, plants it in the ground, waters it, and then says, okay, that's me done. We'll do some training on how you look after the tree, and if you've got any problems, here's a 1-800 number, call us if there's an issue. And on the financial side, I've got your money. But where's all the risk? Where's all the risks about this tree, about the software that we've delivered? Okay, it's not with me. I'm done. I've gone. You'll never see the salesman again, right? He's off. You guys are carrying all the risk for the success of this tree. I always find it fascinating that working in software companies, when somebody gets a big order, you know, a congratulatory email goes round to the rest of the team, big order here, great job, Fred, well done, woo woo, excellent. What's the sort of email that's going around in your organisation when you've just signed a big software contract? It's not whoop whoop, it's what the hell have we done? The work starts here, we've got to make this a success, or my arse is on the line, right? And I've never understood why the two business models are completely out of whack with each other. You know, where's the risk for me in your success? It's gone, it's not there. Now the cloud is clearly changing all of that. Because the cool things about the cloud is installation, startup costs are very low, it's easy to use, it's cheap. Right, it's cheap to get started. There's no 100 grand, 200 grand, $1 million up front doing the installation and get the thing set up. And you're not tied in. You're not tied into one supplier. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. Now, if you think about it from my side, I'm sitting here going, this can't be right. You know, this engagement, this methodology of doing business has been in place for the last 40 years. And now, however, is the time that this is completely being changed. And I think going forward, it's not only cloud engagements that will change, it's all type of software engagements with software companies, because you know, you're asking the question, why should we pay up front? And where, Mr. Software Provider, is the skin that you're putting into the game of this being a success or not? Now, this isn't a sales pitch, but I've got a really good example of how the cloud and the whole business engagement between software companies, this side of the white line, and you guys is changing. We're doing some work currently for a globally well-known Tier 1 automotive supplier. We've got some software that allows you to analyse if you have any duplicate parts in your databases. So physically the same shape but under a different part number. And we can extract that information, tell you how much it's costing you, blah, 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 blah. Now this customer has said to us, I think I've got a duplicate problem. I think it could be a big problem, but I don't know. So instead of us saying to him, well, here's the price of the software, here's the price of the services, you know, where's your PO? He's saying, that's not going to work anymore. You need to put some skin in the game. So what we're now talking about is us doing all the work for nothing and taking a percentage of the savings. Now this is, in my opinion, just one example of how the cloud is completely changing the way that we do business. The other thing is, you know, in the software industry, this has been going on for years, and you know, we come out with all these new features so that we can differentiate ourselves from our competition. And every couple of year or 6 months, we'll come out with a new release that's, you know, look at this whizzy new feature. We can now do this in pink instead of red. Isn't that wonderful? What happened in the recession and what we saw a lot of is people saying, well, actually, why am I paying for this? You know, if it's good enough, it's good enough. I don't want to pay for anything extra. And again, the cloud gives you the ability to sort of turn things on and turn things off so that you're not encumbered by paying for things that you don't actually need or want, right? Excuse me, I need some. So I think the coming together of these things has really changed the industry and is changing the industry, and I think you're going to see more and more change in the business relationship over the coming years. Because traditional take a purchase order and, as I said, plant the sapling and go away is not going to work anymore. It's just not. And it's, as I said before, the financial model is completely opposite in that the traditional model than it needs to be. I think it's incumbent on the software business to take some risk in your business, and success needs to be built on joint success. It was interesting to hear this morning that Plex have a 97% renewal rate, which is excellent. But if they don't deliver, you're quite entitled to go somewhere else, because you don't have these high transfer costs. You don't have to give somebody 10,000, 100,000, 10 million to start up again. You're not tied in anymore. And it's given you guys far much more power over us than has ever been in the past. So the other thing that's happening is, because, you know, complexity is increasing and variability. I was at a customer not that long ago, just to give you an example of how things are changing, and this is just going to accelerate and get worse and worse and a bigger and bigger problem. They made, again, it was a tier 1 automotive supplier here in Detroit. They manufacture bumpers. I'm struggling. What's the American term for a bumper? Bumper works? Okay. Or fender, is it? That was what I was. Okay, good. They manufacture those. So basically, as he said, you know, 5-6 years ago, these were basically very large pieces of plastic, right? That's what they produced, very large pieces of plastic. Today, there's a camera in it, there's sensors in it, there's reversing sensors, there's lane drifting sensors. There's, you know, more technology in this big bit of plastic now than there's ever been in the past. And again, as I say, it's only going to get worse. So trying to manage this complexity and this variation going forward, and as you heard, you know, Industry 4.0, all this other stuff coming, this is only going to get a harder and harder problem for you guys. So flexibility has become one of the most useful and necessary weapons in many of today's competitive markets, but it's going to come at a price. Again, it's dependent on you guys becoming smarter on how you use the information that you're getting and how you use that information. So, talk about some of the disruptive technology and innovations for manufacturing. Business intelligence helps to find answers to the questions you know. Big data helps you find the questions you don't know you want to ask. And here's the thing. The amount of data is just expanding faster and faster than anybody, I think, appreciates. From the beginning of time to 2003, we created 5 quintillion bytes of data. And that's a quintillion is 10 to the power of 18. So beginning of time to 2003, 5 trinquillion bytes of data. We now produce 5 quintillion bytes of data every 2 days. Every 2 days. The rate of digital growth is approximately 40% per year. Cornell University, which, you know, Cornell is one of the world's top 10 universities, their library holds approximately 1 trillion bytes of information. Facebook handles 10 trillion bytes of information every day. All right, there's just no comparison. You heard about 4.0 in the keynote speech and how this data thing's just going to go like this. You know, this slope is just going to go wacky. And the manufacturing industry has a great way of collecting all this information. You know, shop floor, in your products are feeding back information. You know, we saw the scooter on the stage this morning, how that's connected to the internet and it's providing information, etc., etc. However, I fundamentally believe that the manufacturing industry is significantly behind the curve in using this information. Way behind the curve. You know, one of my favorite examples, just to sort of give you an idea of how retail is using this information, there's a large grocery supermarket chain in the UK called Tesco's. They have some pilot projects going where, as a customer, you pick up the trolley, you take out your loyalty card, swipe the card on a reader on the trolley, and as you're wandering around the store, the information, it knows who you are, and it knows your shopping preferences, and it knows where you are in the store. So my daughter, who's got, you know, a young child, as she's going past the baby food section and the nappy section, it comes up and says, if you buy these nappies today, you buy 2, get 1 free. Me, on the other hand, as I go past the red wine section, you know, the alarm bell will go off and I can get cheap red wine. But I don't, you know, I go around and I talk to lots of manufacturing companies. I've just come back from 2 weeks in Europe where I visited probably 10, 15 different manufacturing companies. And I don't see that usage of data in any of the accounts that I talk to. In fact, what I see is multiple different databases with lots of good information that are stuck in silos and not talking to each other. Even the Plex community, there's a big issue with what do I do with all the design information that's coming in? How do I push that into Plex? And once it's there, what do I do with it? Because that's the other thing about big data. You know, in my opinion, 99.9% of the information is not worth anything, right? It needs to be analyzed. And I've thrown out lots of, you know, numbers about quintillion bytes of data here and quintillion bytes of data there. Only 0.5% of all the data that we're producing is actually analyzed. Half of 1%. Now, if we are going to make progress and we're going to make use of all of this good information that we're getting, that number has got to go up. And I think in the manufacturing industry, that 0.5% is even lower. You know, I think it's probably 0.1%. And that's the challenge for both of us. You guys on what to collect, how to collect, and the software industry of how to, you know, make the best use of that information once you've got it. So we've spoken about big data and trends and the Internet of Things, and these are things that are just, you know, this morning's speech as well, you know, many of you guys are doing these things in Industry 4.0, but it's what do we do with that information? How do we use that information to make it beneficial for everybody and for you guys to become more efficient? I assume everybody's aware of Gartner, they know what they do, and so on and so forth. So this is their hype cycle for discrete manufacturing. And this can be applied to anything. Any new technology that comes out goes through this sort of hype cycle. The steam engine. The steam engine was on this timeline here for approximately 850 years, from the time they had the first idea about steam being power till it got out here and was actually being used productively. One of my favourite examples is the zip fastener. The zip fastener took 40 years to get from the innovation to actually being productive. Another little stat that I find quite interesting is at the start of the Clinton administration, there were 6 websites. So that gives you an idea of how the web has taken off and has gone through this very, very rapidly. And when I look at this is their hype cycle for manufacturing and PLM. There's some things up here that I just find absolutely mind-blowing. CAD-centric PDM. CAD-centric PDM has been around for 30 years. And Gartner, this well-respected research company, is saying it's less than 2 years out to reaching the plateau of productivity. And I think this highlights one of the issues with the manufacturing industry. It's got to become more nimble, more agile, and pick these things up quicker. Because if it doesn't, I just don't see how the industry can become more efficient and move forward at a pace that is going to be needed to satisfy customers. There's a few other things up here that I just, again, find absolutely mind-blowing that people are not doing this, more. Synchronization of bill of materials. I mean, really? I mean, the technology to do that, again, has been around 20 years. So if we're not, as an industry, making use of these things that are already here, how are we going to pick up the things that big data and business intelligence and predictive and prescriptive analytics are going to deliver to us? One of the things that, and I'm going to throw a question out to the audience here. How many in this room have a shortage of engineers and you're struggling to hire new people? Right. Pretty much everybody I talk to, if they're doing reasonably well, they cannot find new people. They cannot find skilled engineers. I read recently that in America alone, there's a 600,000 shortage of skilled engineers. So this goes back to my earlier points of how can we make things, it goes back to the recession problem, right? How do you do more with less? And the way to do that is by smart use of technology. But then if I go back to the previous slide and look at that hype cycle, some of the things are just not being grasped and used as quickly as it needs to be. And when you think you've got this tsunami of data coming your way, that some people will definitely make use of and build better products because of it, the big question for you guys is, how am I going to handle this? Where do I start? What's the low-hanging fruit? Because this is really, I think, should be front and foremost in a lot of, managers' minds on the best way of using this big data and this information. Okay, so a little sort of insight to some of the, just some simple examples: telemetry, inquiries, commands, notifications. Formula One have been doing this for many years, but I also found it quite interesting that the NCR have had telemetry in their ATM machines for about the last 15, 20 years. So if the machine starts to go wrong, it sends information back to headquarters. You need to go out and fix it before it goes wrong. Google Maps and TomTom. You know, I also quite like the fact that not only optimizes routes, but I was reading a business case about UPS on how they're saving enormous amounts of fuel by their route finder, optimizing the route so it gets to the next delivery. So it's taking information from the delivery schedule, looking at traffic situations and rerouting the driver and his order of delivery so that he's using a lot less fuel. Remote control and smart home apps. You know, even I have an app on my phone that I can change the air conditioning and the heating controls when I'm out on the road, so it's ready for me when I get home. And push notifications and news alerts. I go back to the fact that manufacturing companies have so much data at their hands, you know, whether it's coming from the shop floor, devices on their own products, information coming from their customers, etc. The challenge, guys, is you've got to make better use of it. It's as simple as that. So the challenges that the next generation of technology seeks to solve, collaboration and innovation. A lot of new products are not new, right? They're just taking old products but mashing them together differently, which requires different collaborations. Simple example, I'm a golfer. Actually, I lie, I play golf, but I'm not a golfer. I try, but I'm not very good. The SkyCaddy equipment it's a GPS system, right? But it's mapped the golf courses onto the system and it gives you yardage, etc., etc. It's old technology, but it's been brought together for a different use. And there's many examples of different technologies being merged together to produce a new product. And that requires far greater collaboration than we've seen in the past. And I think this is something that's going to continue. The ability to form partnerships for one project, and then you might actually be competing against that person in another project. And this has been going on for years and years in the aerospace industry. 100 years ago, I used to work for McDonnell Douglas, and it was common practice that we would team up with, you know, Northrop Grumman for one project and be competing against them in the next. But you need a flexible base in order to form those partnerships, collaborate with your information quite seamlessly without getting bogged down and setting things up in, you know, what I would say is the old-fashioned traditional method. You know, cloud is clearly the way to go in these instances. It just gives you far more flexibility. And with that, you know, you get the improved forecasting, products and production. And, you know, I thought the scooter example this morning was an excellent example of how somebody is taking the available information so they can actually make a better product. You know, their next version of that scooter is going to be far better than the previous one because of the information that they're collecting. I mean, we did some work for Jaguar Land Rover a couple of years back where it was monitoring the development of new cars, and you know, they could look at a dashboard to see progress, and there was sort of green tiles, red tiles, and there was grey tiles. The grey tiles were sub-assemblies that were being used in a previous model year that they'd just reused in the 2017, 2018 model. So these were things that were released in 2012, 2013, etc. We was also pulling information from the warranty system. And if it broke some certain business rule, this little grey tile would then suddenly get a red ring around it. So the designer knew that he couldn't just take that sub-assembly and reuse it in a new model because there was some warranty issues. That's the sort of thing that I'm talking about here to give an enhanced service and faster support to customers, because previously, they would have just used that sub-assembly, it would have gone out and they would have had the same, you know, service issues that they had previously. So this is a good example of how using data for the benefit of your customers so that you can produce a better product is being used in practice. And this is the thing, it all needs to be at cost-effective levels. And this is, again, why I fundamentally believe that the business relationship between you guys on that side of the white line and the software industry on this side of the white line has changed forever, basically. We can no longer expect you to fund us without any risk. It's just not going to happen going forward. So, industry challenges that the next generation technology seeks to solve: real-time decisions and alerts based on manufacturing data, integrated manufacturing systems and business performance information for insights and improved decision-making. Here's another example. One of our customers, they have this simple business rule that if the cost of the raw material within a component goes above 30% of the quote price, their profit margin starts to be eroded. Well, that's a relatively simple business rule. If the raw material price goes above 30% of the quote price, we have a problem. So today, every time a CAD engineer saves the file, there's software that extracts the volume of the component, extracts the material information, extracts the cost of that material from an external website, compares it to the quote information from the CRM system, does a simple arithmetic check to see if it's below 30% or not, and if it's above 30%, it instantly sends an email to the head of sales and say, you have got a problem because you're getting paid on profit margin. This project is just starting to erode that margin. So all the information's there. It's all in these different databases or an Excel spreadsheet. It's how do you use it and make the most use of it. And as I said before, currently only 0.5% of all the information that we're collecting is being analysed. And in the manufacturing business, it's even less than 0.5%. The technology is there for you to do these things. But as said before, I'm convinced that the manufacturing industry is definitely behind the curve when you look at other industries like retail, banking, insurance, etc. The third bullet is also, I think, becoming a bigger problem. You know, I know here in Detroit, the big three won't give serious contracts to any tier 1, tier 2 suppliers unless they have facilities in the Far East, in China. So how do you then manage that data as well? You know, and wide area networks and internal clouds, quite frankly, I just don't think are going to hack it. But this again is a problem that's just going to get harder and harder. And the last bullet, negotiations with suppliers, I think a lot of that starts with the software industry. And this is basically fundamental. You've got all the information, it's sat there in these different disparate databases. How do you pull it together and how do you use it? How do you make sense of it? And quite frankly, I don't think the software industry has done a very good job of filtering and stripping out the important information. Because as I said before, 99.9% of the information that we're collecting is probably just mundane rubbish. You guys need to understand the anomalies and see the trends early. It's not about the clutter and the noise. And there's a lot of work going on in the software industry of how do we provide you with filters so that you can strip out that dross basically and just present you with the useful and good information. The first bullet's interesting, and I think particularly for me, the traditional suppliers are slipping. I mentioned before that we've had this 40-year-old relationship between you guys putting up probably 70% of the money that I'm going to take from you over the life cycle of a project in the first 18 months. The cloud has changed all that. When I look at companies, let me think of an example. I might offend a few people, but there we go. Dassault Systems. Yeah, I worked for Dassault for 7 years. 6 of them, it was for good fun. They've just released version 6. And it's not part of the maintenance agreement. They're actually asking you to pay again. You know, it's not only, you know, as I said before, the business model with the software business was already skewed against your business. We'd get all the money up front. You'd carry all the risk until the software delivered. And yet, Dassault are actually saying, okay, no, not even maintenance is good enough. You're going to have to pay for this software again. I just don't see how that can continue going forward when you have pressure from the cloud saying, and even with CAD, right, there's a few cloud CAD systems that are being released now that I'm sure will put more pressure on people like Dassault. And also my point earlier about if it's good enough, it's good enough. I don't need all these extra features. I know many companies that are saying, okay, I'm going to reduce my number of CATIA licenses and supplement with a lower cost SolidWorks license, for instance. I really fundamentally believe that a lot of the traditional companies are going to just have to change the way they operate. I mean, I heard the other day that the ex-CEO of SAP tried to sort of slow down their cloud offering because it was impacting their traditional business too much. Well, you know, that's just going to happen, folks, and you need to get on board with it. Exposing manufacturing and PLM challenges. I mentioned earlier that, you know, one of my claims to fame was that I wrote the very first technical specification with a chap called Jim Kane out of Kodak for Team Center Engineering, as it became, you know, Ironman, or pre-Ironman this was. And PDM PLM solves a very complex problem. And then the concept of enterprise-wide PLM came into existence on how this could be an overarching umbrella for everything in the design process before we send it to manufacturing. I've been in this business 30 years. I don't know one customer anywhere worldwide that has successfully deployed an enterprise-wide PLM software solution. It just doesn't exist. Quite frankly, it's marketing bullshit. It's too difficult, it's too complicated, and why on earth would you put all your eggs in one basket and one supplier? Because he can then certainly screw you. This is something that it needs to happen, but there's better ways of doing it than just PLM and ERP. You know, it should be, most companies now have best-in-class products going through the process. And again, the cloud changes things because you can experiment at a low cost. You haven't got those big upfront costs anymore. I don't know any companies now that are doing their homegrown management systems. That's not strictly true. I know one or two, but most of them are trying to get off. You know, you should stick to what you know, right? And the benefits of implementing next generation technology: a clear return on investment that's risk shared. It's risk shared between you, the manufacturing company, and the companies this side of the white line, the software companies. It cannot continue that our business models are so out of whack going forward. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think after the recession, it doesn't make sense to a lot of CFOs on your side of the white line. So where do we go from here? The data's there, and it's coming in, and the data's only going to increase. It's all about increasing visibility of the assets, the processes, and the data. And And I've rushed the last little bit because I appreciate I was running out of time. So I think I was supposed to leave 10 minutes for questions. I think we've probably got 2 minutes for questions. Any questions? So a question for you then. Do you think my thoughts about the cloud and the way that it's going to change the business model between you on that side of the white line and me on this side of the white line is valid? I mean, can you see that there is a fundamental change occurring? Well, if there's no questions, I sincerely hope that you didn't find that too boring and you found giving you some food for thought over the next coming days. And thanks for your attendance, folks.